Cape Canaveral. Lots of moving parts, lots of things happening up until the very last minute, and we have a lot to cover for you. This is a live picture. This is from inside the capsule. Both astronauts here, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, they have been staged there now for some bit this afternoon. It is all systems go, despite much of the weather talk that we had heard about earlier today and yesterday as well. But of course, anything can change up until the very last minute. We have you covered this afternoon. My colleague Chris Costa is reporting for us from the Space Center Houston, right here in our own backyard. And we also have Dr. David Alexander joining us. Dr. Alexander is the director of the Rice Space Institute. Thank you both for joining us. Well, we want to get started with a scene setter right now at this time at 3:04 as we watch the live picture here of the launch pad. Dr. Alexander, good afternoon to you. Talk to us about what is likely taking place with just 30 minutes to go.
Thanks, John. And I can tell you the excitement is really building online.
I think people around the country are pretty nervous, including me, and I'm just watching this on TV. But looks good from the technical point of view. All of the checks have been done, and the spacecraft and the rocket and everything, even the station, is ready to receive the crew. So everything's looking good from a technical point of view. They got the go no go decision at T-45, which was maybe about 15 minutes ago now, and so they're basically preparing to and started the loading of the fuel.
So, Dr. Alexander, you talked about you're nervous. I know, as we've been listening to viewers on social media as well, they're saying they're nervous, but two people who likely aren't nervous are the men right inside the capsule there, the astronauts. That's because they have prepared so much for this moment, right?
Sorry, I missed that. I think we were talking over each other there.
Sure, no problem. So we were talking about nerves. You know, everyone's anxious, nervous excitement. You were saying you were nervous yourself. I was saying two people who likely are not that nervous are the astronauts themselves, because they have trained and they have prepared for this.
Well, that is true. And then both, of course, have had a couple of flights as well. Both their wives are astronauts, so I think everyone's kind of used to this. But it's hard not to be excited, and with the excitement comes the nerves. So, but they've got two fantastic people there, and I'm sure they're as comfortable as anyone can be at this particular moment.
So this is a joint mission that is happening, and that's why it is so important, because we're embarking on a new journey in space flight, space travel, and that's because we have a commercial component. We have SpaceX, who is helping to see this out, as we are watching some video that was recorded earlier of the astronaut strapping in case you're just joining us. But speaking to this joint mission, talk to us about SpaceX's contributions in addition to what NASA is carrying out in this mission.
Well, I think so. NASA has always worked with commercial companies and contractors, you know, Boeing and Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and so on. What's different today is that it's a new kind of arrangement with commercial companies, and SpaceX has been one of the more successful of those. The new kind of contracts, if you consider the space shuttle program, NASA put something like 10,000 to 12,000 requirements on those companies to get the space shuttle going. For the commercial crew program, which includes, in addition to SpaceX, includes Boeing with their Starliner spacecraft, the number of requirements that NASA put on them was 300 or a couple of hundred. So they're basically allowing these businesses to bring in their own innovation, bring in their own engineering and technical capability, and providing a service to NASA. And so SpaceX has done that particularly well. They've done a lot of testing over the years of not just of the rocket, but of the capsule, and then moving up from the cargo Dragon that they had. They've now got a pressurized vehicle, which is the Crew Dragon, and it's looking pretty good, I think. So again, that's a kind of new era in how NASA does business, and it's also a kind of important lesson for us as we go on to exploring the moon in the future.
Right, because that is part of the ultimate mission, is returning to the moon and also going to Mars. Let's talk a little bit more about SpaceX and the innovation and the technology there, just within the capsule itself that we're seeing the astronauts in here as we get closer to launch time here. That within itself has so many new parts, so many things that SpaceX was able to institute and put into this capsule. So instead of numerous buttons, levers, and light indicators, it's featuring things like touch screens compatible with the spacesuit gloves. And they've built even their own custom fit suits. So there's been so much innovation here on the side of SpaceX. And that's essentially what the space program is about, right, Dr. Alexander? Pushing forward to the next innovation, new technology.
Yeah, it's starting to look like the 21st century. I mean, this is pretty cool to see. Obviously, the key components of a capsule are not much changed since the Apollo days. I mean, you have to pressurize it, you have to make it safe, you have to do all these things. But the innovation's there to make it have all those technical capabilities, look good, accommodate a crew of 7 people ultimately, and have those seats that can be moved in and out, have the touch screens. Redesigning the suit so that it lives up to its expectations, and at the same time, even just having a glove that can work on a touch screen, that's a pretty impressive innovation already, because you have to have these pressurized suits, and so it's really been exciting to see.
It is, and I know another feature and something that's brought a lot of excitement around this launch is the fact that the craft will be reusable, this reusable rocket. Speak to us about that and why that is such a game changer.
Well, that's been, I mean, one of my favorite movies in the last few years, video clips in the last few years, has been the simultaneous landing of 2 boosters at one time that SpaceX accomplished. I think it was maybe 2 years ago. It just sends thrills down my spine every time I see it, and I show it to all my classes. And so that reusability, Blue Origin is pushing reusability as well. That ability to refurbish and get those components back on spaceflight is really important. It reduces the cost, it decreases the turnaround time, and so it adds an awful lot more on the flexibility of getting our astronauts to space. The fact that this is now a crewed version, I think, is exceedingly important, and we'll see that maybe about 9 minutes after launch. We will hopefully see the booster come down safely on a floating barge. I think it's called "Yes, I Still Love You" or some kind of crazy thing like that. But they've been very successful in the past, and I think this is an important part of that. And then sometime over between now and the next 4 months, we'll see the capsule itself return to Earth, touching down in the Atlantic Ocean. So this is important for many different reasons, but it does bring us into a kind of modern version of the space program, I'd like to say.
Yes, it is, and it's all very exciting. We're going to talk a little bit more about what's going to happen once they are in orbit, once they reach the International Space Station. But right now, we want to check in with my colleague, Chris Costa, who is at Johnson Space Center, or Space Center Houston, this afternoon for us. Usually, we would see people in crowds there gathering to experience it or just be near Space Center Houston, but because of our current climate and the coronavirus that we're dealing with, it's a little lonely out there, Chris.
Yeah, it is actually what they have here for us. I'm not sure you can turn my camera and see because I'm on my laptop here, but this is basically media row here. And behind me, the Falcon 9 rocket. It's the exact same type that they're going to use in this mission today. This was used previously. You can see some of those scorch marks on it. What you're seeing the back of there are those 9 Merlin engines in the first stage. That process in this countdown, it's already begun to start loading those with that liquid oxygen and that rocket-powered kerosene. So they are getting ready to lift off here, and but it is just kind of the couple of news crews out here getting ready for this big launch.
Yeah, the last 30 to 35 minutes, the crew spends the time fueling up the rocket, as we understand it, as we're watching the clock, and hopefully by now most of that fueling has taken place. I know that you have covered the astronauts as well. Chris, give us a sense of the two men who are going to blast off into space here in just minutes.
Well, we have Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, who both have several years, multiple decades of military experience. Colonel Behnken was with the Air Force, and Colonel Hurley was with the Marine Corps for 24 years. Both of them have flown twice on space shuttle missions. They were actually in the same astronaut graduation class as well. These guys have been described by multiple people that know them closely as best friends. So you probably don't want anybody else sitting next to you in this life-changing mission that's about to happen as they sit in that Dragon capsule ready for launch.
Yes, they are best buds. They are. Both of their families know each other. They spend a lot of time with each other. They have been all smiles the past couple of days. I can imagine this is something, even though they have been into space before, they very much look forward to as we look at video from earlier today as they were suited up, waving to loved ones likely there before they collected themselves and hopped in the Teslas, also produced by Elon Musk and one of his businesses. But before they ventured off to the launch pad, and there's a lot of significance with the launch pad today, Launch Pad 39A. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But Chris, in your coverage of the days leading up to the launch, what has really stood out to you? I mean, what has really captured your attention? Because I know you have been bombarded by so much information and details and notes, but what's really stood out?
Wow. There's so much. And as you said, we've really tried to digest so much in a short period of time. Before I get to that, I want to just let you know that we did another critical milestone here. That second stage, that smaller engine that's directly underneath the Dragon capsule, they just started or finished that loading for the liquid oxygen. So back to your question, Mia, really one of the things that's been so incredible to me is this new type of spacecraft. This is nothing like any of these astronauts have ever flown, so it really is new, even though it's been several years. Astronauts are trained on this particular piece of is here in Houston. They've been going back and forth to Austin, California for the last 2 to 5 years to make sure that they're able to go through all the simulators and do everything that they need to do to be ready for this flight. One thing that they've talked about over and over and over again is the need to be prepared. They want to be knowing exactly what is going to happen at each stage of this, from the countdown all the way through the launch and into orbit and when they dock at the International Space Station. The amount of time and effort that goes into this, not just from the astronauts' perspective, but from all the other people behind the scenes that necessarily don't get all of the face time, there is so much work that goes into this, and that really has been remarkable to me to look at how much work goes into that.
And it all comes down to 3:33 this afternoon when this spacecraft blast off the SpaceX rocket with the Dragon capsule on top of it. Chris Costa, we'll check back in with you in just a moment. In case you're just joining us, we are counting down to the launch of SpaceX and NASA's latest mission this afternoon. A very exciting time in space history, and we're joined this afternoon by Dr. David Alexander. He is with Rice University and their Space Institute, and we know you have been following and you are at home yourself watching right now. Let's talk about, the power of this rocket, and when we see it blast off, give people an idea of what type of thrust, what type of speed we're talking about in order to launch these astronauts into space.
So, the Falcon 9, most of obviously all rockets that want to go into orbit have to escape the pull of the Earth, and so they need to get to a speed of about 12 kilometers per second, a little bit less than that, in order to match the space station and get into that orbit. They have to basically get up to about 17,000 miles per hour, and so that's the capability that has been built into these 9 Merlin engines. It does it in 2 stages, and so we'll see the separation of the first stage a few minutes into the flight, and then that will return to the Earth. So the key thing is doing all of that safely, getting the right timing. That's why there's a launch window. If for some reason today gets aborted, they will fly again on Saturday, assuming the weather cooperates. So really, it's getting off the we're the kind of big gravity well here in the Earth. And basically what we need to do is get up to that 17,000 miles an hour, and that's why these rockets are so large. There are bigger rockets. I've seen one Atlas launch from a distance, and that was pretty powerful. I've never seen a shuttle launch, and I've heard that the shuttle launches are just absolutely amazing. This will be somewhere between that shuttle and the Atlas launch, but I know a few colleagues who are sitting watching it live who are thrilled to see this, and they will get to feel it. We won't feel it here in Houston, obviously on the TV, but it's just any kind of launch you see is an exciting launch, and this one is particularly exciting just because of the purpose of it.
Yes, it is. Captivated our attention, no doubt. For people who haven't experienced seeing a rocket launch before, about how long may the viewers expect to actually see it within their view on TV and to be able to witness it?
Well, I think on TV they'll probably see it a little bit longer than they would from the ground, unless they have some telescopic cameras. And it also depends a lot on the cloud cover, which also has a say in whether they actually go for launch or not. But I think you'll probably see it for the first maybe minute and a half, going on to 2 minutes. Separation occurs, the first phase separation occurs about 2.5 minutes after launch. I'd be surprised if they see that. That will tend to be quite high up already. So I would say for the first, you probably get a minute's worth, maybe a minute and a half. Again, unless you're using a telephoto lens.
All right, Dr. Alexander, at 3:19 on this, what was supposed to be launch afternoon, we are learning from NASA TV that they are scrubbing the launch for this afternoon. We're going to work to find out some more information. There had been a lot of talk about weather, in particular the weather along the eastern coast, like up into the Carolinas, because we know that we were following a tropical system there as well. So we're going to gather some information, all of this happening, of course, in real time. But you can imagine some disappointment there. But of course, safety is always paramount when it comes to the space program. Elon Musk even saying today that the safety of the astronauts was the #1 priority for sure. So we are working to find out more, but we understand from NASA TV that the launch has been scrubbed for today. I am just getting online here and trying to see what NASA has posted here, if they have posted anything since. Of course, hang in there with us. All of this happening in real time. Oh, the director of NASA, Jim Bridenstine, tweeted, "No launch for today. Safety for our crew members at Astro Doug and at Astro Benkin our top priority." They say they will try again to launch America on Saturday with liftoff at 3:22 Eastern Time. NASA TV will begin their coverage at 11 a.m., but we are hearing from NASA and now the head of NASA that there will be no launch for today, in fact. So, Dr. Alexander, let's talk about this, because we had mentioned right when we came on, I said we're go for now, but things can change up until the very last moment, very last second. What do you think of this, of scrubbing the launch and just learning about it with minutes to go?
Yeah, well, I think that's the key thing is always safety, and there was I think the probability was about 50-50 because of the weather, and it's even though the weather at the Cape doesn't look all that bad, they also have to consider the weather at the potential abort site. So, for instance, if something went wrong, a few seconds into the launch, then the abort system takes the astronauts to a kind of, depending on where it went wrong, the abort system puts them down in the ocean somewhere, and so they have to make sure, of course, that the weather there, and they had 50 different locations, that the weather there is suitable for a pickup, a rescue of that crew. So So it's not just the weather at the Cape; it's the weather downrange, and obviously with the current system that's there, that doesn't look. It looks like that's what's caused this scrub of the launch. They were really confident. They wouldn't. It's very complicated to start refueling or to start fueling the rocket, and so they were fairly confident that they went to that stage. And so I guess they'll be more disappointed than the rest of us, I think. So we just look again to Saturday, and I'm hoping that the weather is going to improve before then.
So, Dr. Alexander, what happens in this case? I mean, does the rocket stay where it is? Does the fuel remain in the rocket? Kind of what transpires from this point on?
Well, the rocket will stay there. They'll reintroduce the gantry. They will probably empty the rockets or as much as they can, because if it just sits there for a few days, it would sublimate and you would lose it all anyway. So they just have to reconfigure them. The key thing right now is to make sure that they power down all the systems, make sure it's safe to raise the gantry and get those astronauts off safely, and then get them back to base, and then we'll start the process again.
All over again. And it's not like the astronauts go home from here. They'll be there at Kennedy Space Center, likely be going through the same motions, keeping the same schedule as they had been in preparation for now what will be a Saturday afternoon launch.
Fingers crossed, yes.
How often does this happen, the launches getting scrubbed like this, and especially so close and down to the wire of launch time?
Well, it happens actually quite a lot, and again, because the weather in Florida can be quite changeable. The launch I went to launched to the second, so I was quite lucky. But a number of the demo tests, I was invited to one that I couldn't go to, and it turns out it got delayed about 4 days too. So everything has to be right, and particularly for a mission like this, where there are people involved, everything has to be perfect. And so I think it's obviously the right decision. There's many people watching this, and they know what they're doing, and they've seen this all before, and they were prepared for it. Again, they were hopeful, and the weather didn't cooperate. So they know what they're doing, and it's just part and parcel of trying to get to space in the safest way you can.
Right. It's going to happen. We know that. But we need all of the conditions to be just right to ensure everyone's safety and to ensure everyone's work as well.
Right. That's exactly right.
And we are watching here. This is from NASA. These are pictures and video on the right-hand side of your screen. That is inside the capsule, the Dragon capsule. On the left-hand side of your screen, that is Launch Pad 39A, where you can see the rocket upright, the SpaceX Rocket 9, and on the very top there is the capsule itself. I want to deliver on something we promised to viewers and folks joining us earlier, the significance of the launch pad itself, Dr. Alexander. 39A, we've seen Apollo missions happen from 39A. Give us a little background and history about this launch pad.
Yeah, well, it's a very historic launch pad for lots of reasons. I think even Buzz Aldrin has been tweeting about his memories from there. So originally, actually, I believe it was the 39C was supposed to be, it was renamed to 39A because they were going to build 3 complex 39 launch pads. And if I'm remembering correctly, they didn't build C, and they built C, but then it was renamed A because they didn't build the original plan for A. So it's been there since the beginning. This is going back to 1963. I don't know how many of the Apollo missions were launched for that particular pad, but very many of them. I think the first Falcon launch from the Cape was from pad 39A as well. So the old era is the baton is passed on to the new era, and I think once it stops becoming useful, it will be an historic monument, I think, for the nation. So it's just this is all the fact that there's humans involved. The fact that we're launching from the Cape again, all of these things, it just kind of allows us to look forward to the future, but it also helps us remember the past and how we got to where we are. and the fact that the United States is getting back to launching their own astronauts, I think is fantastic to see, and it's just fitting that it's coming from 39A.
And for people who aren't familiar with the space program and where we are and where we have been in the past few years, the United States was having to depend much on Russian vehicles and crafts to make the trip to the International Space Station. So for the first time in a long time, back on American soil, astronauts being launched into space in an American spacecraft as well, too.
Right. No, I think the July 2011 was the last time we were able to do that. That was the STS-135, the last shuttle mission, in which Colonel Hurley was a crew member, and so yeah, we have a very good partnership between NASA and the Russian space program, and we worked with them very closely to build the station, of course. And we have relied on them for the last 9 years to get the American astronauts up to the station, and it's worked. It's worked really well. I think it's been a good partnership, but I think it's expensive. It's about $80 million a seat at current rates, and it's good to be able to do it where you have a little bit more control of your timetable, you have a little bit more flexibility in the missions that you can fly. And so it'll be really exciting to see, this very first step of that. Maybe we're going to have to wait till Saturday now.
Yeah, it'll be very exciting. And just in case you're joining us, and as we wrap up our coverage here, we thought we were going to go quite a bit longer because we were going to have the launch scheduled for 3:33, but NASA has scrubbed the launch for today due to weather concerns. We know that had been a big discussion up until the very last minute. And of course, the safety of the astronauts is the priority with any mission. So we will all have to wait now until Saturday, this Saturday, May 30th at 3:22 Eastern Time to see this historic launch take flight and for astronauts to blast off into space. Again, Dr. Alexander, we thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for our special coverage. And everyone, we'll see you a little bit later for KHOU 11 News at 4 o'clock with KHOU 11 News 411. And then, of course, we'll have more for you online about the space launch that's coming up Saturday. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a good afternoon.